Hi, it's so nice to see everyone again virtually. You're on season 3, still, soon season 4. Wow, of Music and Chat with Shueh-li Ong, and it's a good morning from me to you in Singapore. Please say hi in the live chat and let us know where you're tuning in from, and don't be backward and coming forward. And remember to put any questions you may have in the same live chat so that I may attend to them as the stream moves along. And I have a mission, and the mission, hopefully by the end of this year, is to raise my subscriber numbers. So please help me and subscribe. And if you're very interested, which I guess is why you're here, about guests to come, future guests to appear on my live stream, please tap also the notification bell so that you'd be alerted to what's coming up. So over the last 2 days, I received a new laptop because the old one was just giving up the ghost, so to speak, and deciding not to do my bidding anymore, which I don't quite like. So I had to reinstall a bunch of software, do a lot of technical tests and so on and so forth, just to get today's stream up and running. So thanks for waiting. We were stalled for a while, but everything seems to be working fine now. So I just want to say at this juncture, say hi to everyone. I want to thank my Music and Chat ambassador, Gary Mayulo, for jumping in and making sure he's directing traffic. And Andre, thanks for jumping in the live chat as well. And and thanks RF in the live chat. You have your initials RF as the moniker. Let us know. Oh, sorry. Okay. Now we can hear you guys. So I had Andre and Keith jumping in a live chat. I had the system audio turned off so you couldn't hear them, but you guys, if you want to jump in as well, do so. And hi, Mike Flevin. Nice to see you. Anyone else out there, please don't be shy. Let us know who you are and where you're tuning in from. We've had viewers from as far as France and Russia. I know that may not be very far where you might be tuning in from, but it's 5 years below the equator. And well, actually, if you're on the equator where I am in Singapore. Singapore is, I think, 5 degrees north of the equator, but we might as well be on the equator, right? Or in Australia, where some of our viewers are from, then you're very far from Russia and France. Hi, Candle. Candle's here as well, saying hello. Anyone else want to say hello before I proceed? Again, my apologies for the late start, but let's get moving. So it's now 9:39 a.m. in Singapore. If you're on the eastern part of USA, such as New York, then you are probably 8:39 p.m. Yes. Okay. So I want to move to the next item, which is usually me playing live. Those of you who've been viewing the live stream on a regular basis have come to realize that my pitch bend wheel has been acting up. It's kind of strange that this end of the year, I've been doing a literal spring cleaning. The spring on my pitch bend wheel has been misbehaving. I've had to replace my speakers because my old ones decided to give up the ghost. So I had to replace my speakers. I've had to replace my laptop. I think I might have to replace the pitch bend modulation wheel, the actual module soon, according to our guest today, Keith Wechsler. I hope I got your surname right, your last name, Keith. So I think there's more to be replaced. Slowly but gradually. So I sprayed some contact cleaner on it. It's doing a little better, but it still feels a little sticky at the best of times. So I want to play for you Frisson, just to prove that I did put some contact cleaner in there and it looks like it's working. But I shan't let the technical get in the way of the musical, which is what it's all about, isn't it? So let me just get my keyboard and theremin cams up. You see them okay? All right, good. And I shall mute my microphone. And let me tune up my theremin first. So, it all worked. It worked.
That was really great.
Thanks. So, COVID-19 has kept many of us indoors and, claps, and away from the live music that we love. It's been for the good of all to stay clear from the virus making us horribly unwell. The live music scene has slowly reopened, and a bunch of our friends are back on the road, serving as touring professionals. Without them, it just wouldn't happen, would it? What other day-to-day duties that even involves monitor and front-of-house engineering? That's a whole skill in itself. Let's say hi to our friends, Cholmondeley, Ben Travers, and Keith Wechsler. Let me get to our Zoom screen. Hi, everyone. Are you unmuted? Can you hear me?
Hello, hello, hello.
You can hear me well, right?
We can hear you, yes.
Oh, yes.
Broadcasting live from Los Angeles, California.
Oh, that's where you are?
Yeah.
Power plant.
That's right. And on.
Yeah, let me just suggest a couple things. I can hear you better, thank you.
Okay, so you're in LA. Andre, you are?
In Asheville, North Carolina, and an extra hello to the grandkids and
Aw.
half-son and daughter-in-law in Singapore, right near.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Hi, all.
Right to the, but Asheville, yep.
Asheville. And Ben, you are?
I'm in northeast Pennsylvania, Wilkes-Barre.
Wow, so we have west, somewhere in the middle, somewhere, and east, and then equator, where I am.
Exactly.
How cool.
United Nations.
Yeah, how cool can that be? Hey viewers, let me get this started. I have a question for all of you to get things started. So most of us would like to know how you first acquired your first gig. Or maybe I should say, how did you acquire your first gig? Shall I
I'll
be?
jump in and
Yeah.
say I got invited to a recording studio owned by a filmmaker. So they made films and recordings in the one facility. I got a job there coiling up cables, and it turned into a career as a sound engineer. And of course, I had been a musician previously, so it was an easy step into sound engineering. But that was my start. Was I just happened to be at the right place at the right time to get a job at the bottom, making tea and coffee and coiling up cables.
That's hard to fathom, isn't it, in this day and age where I've got nothing against the new generation, but we've come to accept technology taking a lot of the mundane stuff out of our work, that it's hard to fathom coiling cables and making coffee still. But yes, that is how it has to be done in many cases, wouldn't you say, still today?
Yeah, absolutely. There's still some mundane portion of whatever it is that is how you get in and get started in any business.
So how did you get to be a touring professional, as you guys are known as, doing stage teching, or a combination of stage teching, front of engineering and all sorts and all ways, sometimes even managing? How did you get involved in that side of things for a touring band?
Yeah, I think, well, my first gig, like Keith, I was a musician. I still have a Frank Zappa tribute band, which is how I met Ben also. And so we were touring, and I didn't realize, but by just figuring that out, how to rent the vans, book the hotels, read the maps. Back then we had maps, and we would draw. But I realized later, wow, that was my training to become a tour manager. In 2006, after many years touring with my own band, I was just hanging around with some fellow music teachers at School of Rock, and somebody said that they were not able to do this weekend gigs with a guy named Al Di Meola, and he said, you should do it, Andre. You know how to tour. Oh no, I could never do that. That's like a real rock star, and jazz star, whatever. And I thought about it, and I called. They interviewed me on the phone, found out that I knew, which side of an amp is up. And I went on this little audition weekend, and that was it. Started touring and working for other people. And it just snowballed from there. But like Keith said, coming into it as a musician, so knowing a lot of different parts of the picture, I think was useful. And we learn every day. I learn on every tour still.
Cool. Thanks, Andre. I'm just gonna check the system audio very quickly, because it seems levels are a little low. I was gonna say slow, but I mean low.
Crank it up.
Okay, can you still hear me, guys?
Yeah.
Gary, Mayulo, can you still hear me? So I'm going to my MacBook audio, and then I'm gonna select your output and check again.
Test 1 2 1 2 1 1.
Check 1 2. Check 1 2.
And I'm still on the air, I'm sure.
Yeah, everyone sounds great internally on Zoom.
Yeah.
So it's the next step after Zoom.
That's bizarre. Gary, can you still hear me? But you guys can still hear me, right?
We can hear you.
Yes.
That's interesting. I've changed several settings, and you can still hear me when you shouldn't be. That's okay. I got a method. I'll just turn, 1 second. I've had to do this before instead of halting the whole thing and trying to figure it out.
So this is always fun, doing tech
Yeah, I hear you.
Again, it's not like it only happens once. It happens, just continually.
Yeah.
I feel so much better hearing you say that because
No, you are not by yourself.
because
Yeah.
every time I move myself from gig to gig, there's bound to be a technical hiccup, and it always steals everything, all the energy away from the creative stuff. You know, after
Absolutely.
you
It
spent
takes you
every
away
ounce.
from the creative,
Yeah.
your right brain, right into the left brain technical and the internal horror of emotional trauma and whatever. It just sucks.
Yeah, I hear you.
And fortunately, sometimes what helps is having done it and screwed up several times in the past, so that you can know that somehow I will survive this.
You
But
can diagnose it a
still
little quicker.
immediately, the immediacy is still panic.
Yeah. So what I've
What'd
done.
you say, Ben?
So you could just diagnose it a little quicker, obviously.
Right,
if
yeah,
you've done
it
a
does
couple
help.
times.
Troubleshooting skills are built up over time. A lot of them are from solving them in the moment yourself. Now, of course, there's the benefit of talking to my friends here and learning from the benefit of their screw-ups or the screw-ups they've been there to witness.
So
There are some really great Facebook groups on disasters and just
Yeah, I hear
giant walls of video screens falling down and things like that. And of course, there are times where people get hurt and things like that, and we all try and learn from that without having to experience it ourselves.
that's true. It's a marvel, and I was going to ask you this question at the very end anyway. But technology has certainly assisted us in so many ways, and in a way as well, it's made us kind of independent of a lot of outside help. However, because we are then self-contained, like the situation I'm in, and everything is knitted behind the scenes in software mode, there is no
Yeah.
way you can pull it apart and visually inspect what's happening.
And that's where I say you live by the computer, you die by the computer, because they help us in so many ways, and they really do just cause so many problems.
So I don't know if you're aware, but I'm running main stage. I'm running Focusrite Scarlett. I'm running Zoom, and then I'm also running my streaming aggregator. So
Did we hear the Korg keyboard, the LE behind you? Did we hear you playing instruments in main stage from that keyboard? Yeah, that's what I thought. So you're changing the presets of that using the X keys?
Yes, exactly, yeah. But I'm using the knobs on the Triton to change volume,
Right.
because there are no knobs on the X key. This is just a makeshift, and my viewers know this because this all started because of COVID. And this is my mom's apartment, and I still don't have my equipment here. So I kind of, scavenged around and found, someone loaned me the Triton, and I brought the X key because I want to do some work. When you are in transit, I had the little X key, and everything else was left over from, I don't know, my past.
Yeah.
So I hooked everything up and realized, that worked. And I didn't expect this to become a regularly viewed live stream, to a point where everyone got used to the fact that I had all these bits and pieces. But I had my special guest, which made this all which gave it the entertainment and the heartwarming kind of, here's our friends and we're in similar situations and we want to talk about this. And let's share what we're going through, kind of a concept. So anyway, yeah. So this is what's happened, and of course my laptop that's 5 years old decided to break down, and I just got this one in, as you know, a day and a half ago. The new one running the Monterey OS. Anyone out there running Monterey's?
I'm not. I definitely stay a few generations behind so that I can keep my equipment working, and I no longer stay at the cutting edge of much of anything that would be the primary instrument. So, for example, the main DAW or something like that. Of course, with Dream Theater, we have a lot of cutting edge technology with us, but it's not always it's not something that would take down the entire show.
Got it. So with that
more like
said,
a specialty item.
sorry, Keith. With that said, let's jump to my little structure here that I want to go through, so that we can cover what I feel are interesting and possibly eye-opening questions about your work as touring professionals, which I like very much, rather than just band tech, because that doesn't describe anything really. Kind of saying, what do you do? I'm a musician. That doesn't describe anything either. They think when I reply I'm a musician, most people think I'm a violin player or a piano player. So there you go. So let's begin with Andre, and I've got some pick keys. I say pick keys because that's what Aussies say, but pictures. So Andre's just gotten off a tour with a Pat Metheny trio. Andre, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I often am.
No, that's exactly correct. My first tour in 2 years and a couple months, so it was a little nerve-wracking, and I'm still actually. It's interesting. I'm still processing, because it was kind of intense, kind of different. Yeah, the masks and the.
Let me display the poster, and let's begin with the picture. So,
Sure.
You were keyboard tech supporting James Francis.
James Francis, yeah.
Yes. And this picture, you should be able to see it soon, but I got it from you. It's his keyboard setup. Tell us about this setup. How did you get familiar? Had you done this tour with them before? Were you familiar with his keyboard setup? How did you get to realize what was a necessary part of what you had to do? I guess what I'm saying is that not just because they're black and white keys, they don't all perform the same way. So how did you figure it out? Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple great questions there, and I'll go through. My first time ever working for Pat Metheny, so it's been a great beginning experience. I'm big fan of his music, as a lot of people our age are, and seen him play live many times. But so my first time touring with him. In terms of being familiar with the keyboards, I've done some keyboard teching on a couple other tours. So and I do a lot of synthesis and synthesizer work for decades. So it was just a matter of finding out what he had. Just very quickly, I'll go through kind of clockwise from the closest keyboard and tell you what he's got. There's a Hammond Xv5, which is their amazing new digital, recent digital Hammond. I tell you, Hammond waited a long time to get into digital and kind of memory-oriented keyboards. They've had a few for a few years. This thing sounds incredible. It's a double manual with the drawbars and everything. So there's a Hammond organ. On top of it, there's a little Novation controller. Then you have a grand piano with another controller on top of it. Both controllers go into a laptop that you can just see the screens off on top of the piano, which goes into main stage that we just mentioned. And so you have organ, grand piano, main stage. James does all the left-hand bass. So really, we're just using main stage for. We're using Spectrasonics Trillion, using a few bass patches. And then finally, on the or to the right of that, there's a King Korg on top of a Korg Kronos. And then finally is a Korg Prologue, which is one of their recent, really excellent analog synths. They've got the Mini-log, the Monologue, the Prologue. And so he's got a mix of analog, digital, software, hardware, and one of the oldest keyboards, the actual grand piano. So it's a nice mix of stuff. I learned what he had before the tour by just getting some pictures and getting some stuff from the production manager, and kind of was happy that I am pretty familiar with Mainstage, and I own a Prologue, so it was good. I hit the ground knowing a little bit of his equipment, but that's it. That's the rig, yeah.
What has been the most difficult piece of equipment to manage in that setup? What's given you the most grief, I suppose?
Well, knock on wood, in the first 3 weeks, really no grief. Knock on wood. There was a little grief, excuse me, the first day or two with, USB interface. It's always the USB. So we actually swapped out a Focusrite interface almost on day one because it just wasn't connecting. But I have to say, it's a simple setup, and other than a USB dropping, knock on wood, everything is, at this point too, instruments are so robust, really for decades, because we have stuff from the 70s in some tours I do that work fine. But no, nothing too temperamental. A piano, we have to have the piano tuner in there once a day, sometimes twice. Maybe I'll say the piano, yeah, because there's a couple times we got some Yamahas where it was a little dicey in
What do you
some
mean?
of the octaves.
Oh, so pitching wise?
Piano,
or
just piano not tuning up all the way or floating out of tune once the temperature changes. So I'd say the piano. That's the one where, every couple nights there'd be a bad note or just not. Piano players really have a high bar, especially someone classically and jazz trained like James Francis. And when we got a really good piano, you could tell. And he would go, this is it. Whether it was a Steinway or a higher end Yamaha. But I was surprised, and I learned a bit there because sometimes it sounds fine to me. It's a grand piano. It sounds perfect. And a really trained pianist can come in and kind of go, that C sharp over here is a little dicey. But really everything worked fine. Yeah.
So were you also responsible for making sure all the programs were correct? Nothing got lost in transit, or including main stage, or was he the minister in charge of looking after his own, resources? You just merely set it up and make sure they were close to identical to where he wanted everything to be?
Sure. Well, the goal in any of the teching that I've done, and that I think most people do, is you want your person to show up, put their backpack down or whatever, and start playing. And everything needs to be there. So that was my role here. By the time he got there, I had the main stage program was waiting. He just sat down and played, and it would be at the right patch. Likewise, the Kronos and all the other ones. And then we have everything backed up in case there's a problem. But I get it all set so that when he sits down for sound check, it's the patches that he likes, it's the patches that he wants. I did a little bit of programming. There's a few things he said, hey, can you change this? Can you change that? But very little. There was just a few things and some. We actually ended up MIDIing the organ to the Kronos so that he could double a Hammond with a saxophone, which is pretty wild. So we did a few little things, but it's a very simple rig. I mean, the piano is probably 40% of what he's playing.
Oh, okay.
On a piano and left-hand bass, yeah.
I have a question and I was curious as well, from our friend Mike Flavin. He said, Andre, did the band tour with the piano, or was it supplied at the venue? I'm guessing the venue, right?
Yes, we had it delivered every night, every afternoon. So, or actually morning, I should say. When we rolled in at 10 a.m., there was the piano. And we had, it's funny, we had the same piano for about 4 nights in the beginning of the tour, just because it was nearby, and it was the same rental company. But no, they get delivered, on a bigger Pat Metheny tour and on bigger tours of other acts. Sure, you do bring the piano, but this was a very small little trio tour, so it was a rental every day.
Was there anything that went wrong that you couldn't solve at all? Or has there been any occasion whereby there was something that you just couldn't wrap your head around because whatever it was? I didn't want to make it up, but...
Yeah, fortunately, again, on this tour, it's a short tour, knock on wood. Nothing, there was no showstoppers. No, there was nothing. But yes, of course, in my career, amps. I think amps have blown up, and those have gone away. But almost everything else, like Keith said, you always have 2 or 3 spare guitars or keyboards or something in the system. But amps can be the trouble if the main amp goes away.
Do you travel
and
with the
I've
amps then? You do?
Yeah, my guy only uses, as you can see on the left of this picture, there's a bass cabinet, and we do put his bass through a bass amp so we can get a nice bass sound. But it's a solid state like a GK amp, and it was perfect. But we do have a couple spares, yeah, just in case. Those are war horses, though.
Thanks, Andre. I have a picture you sent me of you on the same tour, but is that you holding a guitar? Can't quite tell. Is that you at all?
Let's see. Let's see. I don't see the picture yet. But I would say right off the bat, though, if it's me holding a guitar, then it's probably a tour with another act. Oh, this one. Oh, okay. No, this is that's the Pat Metheny trio on stage. Yeah. So
So were you?
it's.
What were you doing?
So in this picture, I am. Well, I probably took this picture. Yes, I'm over by the front of house. We got a little Yamaha digital desk there. So this is just the first production day, I think, that we were rehearsing in Plymouth. But that gives an idea of the stage setup. You know, kind of Pat in the middle, keyboards on stage right, audience left, and the drummer. And then behind the drummer, there's bits of this thing that Pat has called the orchestrion, which are these robot instruments that I recommend everyone check out if you don't know about that. They are mechanically driven marimbas and drums and bongos and cymbals, and he did a tour where he was the only human on stage, and he had about 50 of these strange mechanical instruments. So we have a couple of those on the tour.
Okay, cool. Yes, I have seen videos of that. Those of you who haven't, please check them out. I have information from you that this is my segue now of one of your pre-COVID gigs with your buddy, who's also our guest today, Keith Wechsler. Keith, tell me if I'm saying your last name correctly.
It's Wechsler.
Wechsler.
Like an X, Wechsler.
Thank you, Wechsler. There you go. I should have asked you, but it just slipped my mind. My apologies. So you did a Emerson and Lake US tour of 2010 with your buddy Keith, and still with Andre. You handle Greg Lake's guitars and bass. Am I correct?
Yeah, that was the first time I toured with Keith, with either Keith, and I was bass and guitar tech for Mr. Greg Howe, so that was fun. And
you mean Greg Lake, of course.
for Greg Lake, sorry.
Greg Howe, we also toured with, or
Yeah.
I did
Yes,
anyway.
You know,
Hey,
a little Freudian slip.
don't worry, I do that all the time. I'm thinking ahead, and I meld the two names together.
But we do
No,
need to
the
be
names, yeah.
sure to introduce Andre is Steve Howe's guitar tech as well.
That's right, and I'm probably one of the only people who's worked with Greg Howe and Steve Howe. But on that note, I just wanted to share this picture
Nice.
because you were playing the Triton before us. I thought this was relevant.
Cool.
But since you brought up Keith, this is a funny picture of Keith Emerson helping me take his practice keyboard out of the guest room. You know.
Oh yeah.
But Keith was very funny, and he would do funny things like that. So, but yeah, that was a great tour working for Greg Lake and taking care of his 8 or 9 guitars and basses, and getting to work with a great crew. It was the first time I toured with Keith Wechsler, and we've done many tours since. Yeah.
Andre, could you show us that picture one more time? I just want to make sure we caught it, or a little of it.
Here we go. So
In the screen share.
This is Atlantic City, New Jersey, May of 2010.
Wow, I've not been to Atlantic City, New Jersey. I've been wanting to, but one day.
One day, yes.
One
I think
day.
it was even May 15th.
There we go.
But
I see. All right, okay, hold on there. I'm gonna diminish my screen. So, cause when you guys screen share, it maximizes my screen, and the vision mix catches whatever occupies that section only. So I'm gonna wait and So sorry guys. There we go. Yes, now we see the entire picture. Wonderful. Now I know how this works.
Trial and error.
There we go. There we go.
Thanks for your patience. How did you manage to switch from keys to guitar? Now you were guitar teching before you did keys, right? Or am I wrong, Andre?
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, the first kind of teching I did for other people was guitar, and you kind of do anything on stage. And the very early tour I did, again in the Zappa world, I did a tour with some guys called the Grandmothers, which were some of the mothers of invention that reunited in 2001. And on that tour, you set up the bass amp, you helped set up the drums. It was an electronic drum kit. You helped the guitars. So you kind of, that's one of the things I think all three of us are good at that. We wear a lot of hats. And sometimes you get crew people who, they only do one thing, and that you don't get as many gigs. I know all three of us, though, could be anywhere on the stage. But I've done a lot of guitar and bass teching, and I play guitar and I play keyboards, but mostly I'm a guitarist.
You know, it's interesting that you brought that up, and I want the viewers to know that it's not a light job to be teching on stage. There's a lot of stress, especially when you are tasked with multiple jobs, such as what you mentioned just a few minutes ago. And it brought to mind how when a musician is hired to play multiple instruments, they're known as the utility guy.
Yeah.
Which is not a very apt name for that poor person who can play multiple instruments, isn't it? Oh, I'm a utility musician. Oh, I see. What do you do precisely? I do everything.
Well, it's a bonus sometimes. And, one of the things I'm always inspired by, Ben here, I think, has done one of the craziest things of all of us, because Ben used to set up the Terry Bozzio drum set. I mean, I see pictures, like, there's nothing in the music biz almost. Ben, any memories on that? I mean,
yeah, while we're at Ben, since Andre pointed it out, Ben, will jump to you. Tell us about how you managed that. Did you start off teching drums, or was it some other thing? Were you monitoring from a house before you did drums, or?
Actually, the first time that I had some sort of influence into the music industry, I was coming to see Andre. Well, not really. I didn't know Andre at the time, but coming to see his Zappa tribute band, Project Object. And I was asked to do merch because I was underage and I wasn't actually supposed to be at the show. And therefore, working merch, I was asked if I had a job from the general manager there, and he asked me, if I wanted to be the new dishwasher barback. So I actually started at a music venue just washing dishes, and over the years, kind of just working up the ladder. And I was going to school for audio engineering, but more studio concentrated. And I worked at this music venue for 5 years. I was the general manager. I was also the head audio engineer. But when I left the Jazz Cafe, the first kind of taste of touring I got was back with Project Object, the first band I saw at the Jazz Cafe. And I kept up my relationship with Andre over the years because Project Object would play there once a year. And when I left the Jazz Cafe, I really wanted to go on the road. And, everybody kind of was coming into the music venue and coming into my house. And I wanted to kind of go to other venues and kind of be able to travel the world, and so getting into that and going work Project Object, I just started off as just a regular, like, everything guy, like Andre mentioned, kind of like you just take the gigs as they come and you learn on the way. So I started off just doing merch with Project Object, which led to doing some regular roadie stuff, and you just learn things. When I'm also a drummer, but I started kind of later in life. I didn't start playing drums until I was like 21. And then, a gig leads into another where Andre mentioned, hey, they need a driver for this tour. Are you available, and do you have a clean driver's license and a good passport? And I was like, yeah. And he was just like, you'll be getting a call soon. and that's when I met Keith, and went on the road. That was the first gig or first tour that I toured with the band UK with Eddie Jobson and John Wetton, and it was the reunion trio tour. So it was the first time I met Terry Bozzio, and Terry had a big kit, but it wasn't as big as his solo kit. It was more condensed into playing. It was still very large. I think it had 5 kick drums.
Whoa.
And because I was just there to just drive the gear, they didn't know at the time that I also had a background in drum teching and or audio engineering, mainly front of house at the time, which is different now because now I'm doing more monitors. And then, you know, just like those guys mentioned, it just one gig leads to another. And with the Terry Bozzio tour, from meeting Terry on that UK run, the following year he was setting up a whole summer tour, 3 months long in the summer, and he called me up and asked me if I was available because his drum tech that he usually uses from Europe wasn't able to get a visa in time, and I just, you know, was like, I can't pass up this opportunity. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know how I'm going to do it or what's going to happen. But you kind of just, you know, learn to throw yourself into those uncomfortable zones, because that's the only way to really grow.
That's an interesting point that you brought up, the uncomfortable zones. From outside looking in, it seems like a seamless procedure and no big deal. Oh, look, we all make it look so easy. But there's a reason why you make it look so. My question is, you know, setting up a kit involves placement issues specific to the artist, height adjustments, even the tuning of the instrument. How did you manage to appease, let's say, Terry Bozzio, and how did you gain his trust?
I mean, it happened, you know, rather quickly, but it did help that I had some sort of relationship with him prior. So it wasn't a completely new experience for both of us. And then you just have to throw yourself into the fire. I mean, there's no kind of other way. Learning a drum kit that size, again, fortunately, he is kind of a genius when it comes to building drum racks, and it's just a piece of art, really. And if you know, it was set up properly where it was very easy to set up and break down. It took a really long time, but it was, you know, months of innovative kind of work that him and his other techs that he has at the DW factory were able to do. And he showed me a couple times, and then it was kind of just me doing it and, you know, having things fail and learning from those failures, and then kind of keep going. And you know, there was definitely some ebbs and flows of the drum kit, you know, that you have to learn per room, because it's not just like every stage is the same or every stage is level, or that you're dealing with the same stage hands or local crews. And I was just one man. I was by myself, and driving every mile of the tour, and tour managing, and, you know, that kind of stuff. So it was definitely an adventure. But yeah, 42 times set up, 42 times broken down in a total of 81 days.
Wow. What's the worst thing that has happened?
Well, I also had to be running merch while he was playing.
Ooh.
So sometimes I was far away from the stage, which wouldn't be obviously beneficial if something, you know, occurred. And there was a time where he had a piece of his rack that would go above his head and over. It was 2 or 3 pieces of rack that were clamped together, and he had a 36-inch gong hanging from it and a bunch of tune gongs, and it snapped and just fell down, you know, during the performance. Luckily, he wasn't by the drum kit when it happened, but it's one of those things where someone comes rushing out to me, and then I have to, you know, run to the stage and fix it and stuff like that.
How do you fix it? How do you recover from something like that? How fast did it take for you to fix it? where you knew it was precisely that it would play okay, you know. There wouldn't
I guess
be any.
just, you know, just knowing kind of the tendencies of the rack over the time and seeing that, you know, we were pushing the rack to its limits. So it was really just a matter of time before certain things would go. So it's just being kind of mindful of those things.
Thanks, Ben. I'll come back to you in a few.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Andre, I got another picture of you, though. Speaking of Greg Howe.
Right, yeah. The great Greg Howe.
I got a picture of you holding Steve Howe's guitar.
Okay. Which one is it?
Oh, should be coming up soon.
Yeah, I guess I see it when it comes live on YouTube.
There we are.
We have a little some funny comments from Mike Flavin. Yeah, bang a gong, very good. That's
Oh, there you go.
Okay, and oh great, yeah. So that is that's a fun picture. Boy, where was that? I always love trying to figure out where the hell. Anyway, it was somewhere on tour, and that's a very special guitar. That's Steve Howe's ES5. It's you know, a Gibson. It's a Gibson guitar, and it I forget. There's another name for those two. Not Switchmaster, maybe. I forget the name. Anyway, the most special provenance of this guitar, as they say, that's the actual guitar that plays on the Yes record "Fragile."
Oh, is that so? Wow.
Which just became 50 years old recently. So that guitar is on every song on Fragile, with the exception of the acoustic thing, "Mood for a Day." That's a nylon string, and then also. The last song on the record, Heart of the Sunrise, is his 175. But that's the guitar, folks. That's the guitar on things like Roundabout and Long Distance Runaround and The Fish and all those great songs. One cool thing about Steve, many cool things about Steve, but one of the very many cool things is he uses these original guitars. You know, some guitarists and whatever instrumentalists leave these valuable instruments behind a glass case in a museum setting, and I love that about Steve. His attitude is, no, these are tools, these are instruments. I'm going to use them forever, you know. And so we carry it around, the actual Telecaster that's on Gates of Delirium. We have the actual 345 that's on Close to the Edge, et cetera, et cetera. You know, we have about 7 or 8 amazing instruments. Yeah, but the last thing I'll say that's interesting about this guitar is 3 humbuckers, which you don't see often. There are some Gibson Les Pauls with 3, famously like Peter Frampton and Ace Frehley have the 3 pickup version, but it's rare to see that. And this one, again, called the Switchmaster, yeah, it lets you come up with some very unique combinations of those 3 pickups. So special guitar there, yep.
And he trusted it to you. I use a Bob Moog. Bob Moog helped me customize my theremin, and I would not let anybody touch it but myself.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Well, it took a while. You know, the first time I toured with Yes was 2011, and his guitar tech at the time was becoming the tour manager. And so they needed me to come in, but yes, to that trust thing, it took almost that whole tour before I actually would hand Steve the guitars. I would do the string changing and taking care of the guitars and maintaining them, but Steve's a perfectionist, and he really wanted to make sure I knew all the moves of bringing the guitars and what songs. So our tour manager would have to be a tour manager, and then during the show come over for a part of the show for the handoffs. But by about the end of the tour, Steve had entrusted me. But yeah, you raise a great point. I'm around these really museum pieces of art that you have to be very careful and wash your hands and don't have belt buckles and things like that. You have to be real careful, yeah.
Yeah, trust is a very important subject for becoming a successful band technician, because trust is earned. So partially it's the trust of one person to another. I also think that trust is earned from the equipment. So if a piece of equipment gets fixed, I don't trust it until it's proven itself to be working again. And the same thing with a stand or a setup or wires, or every bit of minutia. Main stage is another one it's like, okay, you got all these things balanced together, and until it works for some small amount of repeatedly, you don't trust it. And all of that comes with sweating and waiting, and it's the same thing with people. And here you're talking about the guitar on Fragile. That is a fragile guitar, and every time you're changing strings, you're stressing it and you're pulling on it, and if you damage it, boy, that could be the end of working with the artist.
Speaking of trust, I think of temperament, and artists are known to have a very disciplined temperament, along with touring professionals such as you. And often what you see on stage is merely an act. Unbeknownst to the audience, they think, oh, that person has a bad attitude, but it's all an act for you. And I have a picture of, speaking of trust, I got a picture of Mr. Keith Emerson, pinned under his Hammond organ, I believe, a very popular antique of his. But much later, and I had mentioned this earlier on, you and Andre worked on the Emerson and Lake intimate evening live tour, according to, I think this is a cover from a DVD perhaps, that I have on screen right now, which you'll see in a few seconds. Did Keith Emerson have much of his regular keyboard setup, his modular, his Hammond organ, and all the others that he's so popularly known to use?
So I worked with Keith Emerson for many, many years, either with Emerson, Lake and Palmer or with the Keith Emerson Band. Mm-hmm. He did most of the concerts where we carried the world's most dangerous synth. The giant modular Moog was probably 600 pounds when it was in its road case. It took 6 or 8 people to pull it out of its case and put it up onto the stand for a show.
Wow.
And you had to be very careful at the end of the night to tell everybody, no, don't pull all those patch cords out.
Yeah.
Leave them there. Otherwise you had to, restore all the patch cords.
Yeah.
And, talking about keeping equipment alive on stage, it's hard if he's sticking knives in it and pumping it like you saw the picture. And the modular Moog, of course, is a lot of components inside each and every module in it. And it's a system where many times something would go wrong, and we had to find a way to get around each one of those things. I'm going to share my screen and show you.
Yes, please.
Talking of, things that go wrong. Like, here's a picture of a show with Dream Theater where, it's everybody thinks it's really fun to, play in front of hundreds of thousands of people, but of course it can be nerve-wracking. And I'm gonna.
And while you're on that picture, speaking of working, friends tend to not realize that at a show you are actually working.
Yeah, that's true.
They would start texting you, want to go out for whatever later,
it involves
or come join us.
Intense concentration to do it at the level that the three of us do it. And it's great to work with. Here's Mike Mangini's drum kit. I'm not the drum tech, but I just appreciate being around wonderful equipment like Andre was talking about. And, we do get to work with some awesome people and awesome stuff. Here's Jordan Rudis. I just love the guy, and he's got some amazing equipment, and it's a pleasure to work with it. Here's Keith Emerson's organ. One show, it caught on fire during a show. Now there's something you can't just quickly recover from. That organ caught on fire, burned itself up, and did not play for the rest of the tour.
Keith was seen with a cigarette lighter inches away, but that has nothing to do with it.
No.
No, I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
you know, this was an organ built in the 50s to go in somebody's living room, and Keith Emerson, of course, took it on tour, stuck knives in it, tipped it up, got underneath it, did all of his antics with it, and one day it finally just gave up. Now, this is a picture of a piano we purposely set on fire for a photo for the album cover.
I feel for the piano.
Yes, absolutely. You know.
I guess only Keith Emerson can get away with it.
You know, so much of what we do is about planning ahead so that in the eventuality that something goes wrong, we take care of it either before the show starts or quickly during the show so that it's maybe seamless to the audience so that you don't see it. Keith Emerson was great when that organ caught on fire, and once we got the power back up to his keyboard rig and whatever, he just carried on and played a different instrument out of his arsenal. And you know, we had two Hammonds. We had the main Hammond, and this is the one, the L100, that he would kick the crap out of every night. So he just played something else when it came to that part of the show. But you know, for some people, it would completely throw them and make it very difficult to continue a show. And so as a technician, we try very hard, of course, to avoid any kind of instruments catching on fire.
You made an interesting point, because I use Mainstage primarily with a MIDI controller, so I don't have so many items to take with me. Have any of you had to deal with a situation where it's a minimalistic setup, and with one item going, you had to replace it somehow, otherwise the show doesn't go on, or your artist just somehow jumps on something else? Has there ever been a situation in a more minimalistic type setup where you've kind of...
For me, that's happened often, and so absolutely a part of the prep for every show is to think, what would I do if any one piece of gear were to fail? And I have workarounds for all of that. So you talked about Mainstage. Eddie Jobson plays two controllers and some foot pedals controlling two laptops running Mainstage. And so, you know, for example, if a computer were to die, that's one whole keyboard's worth of instruments, and it's hundreds of sounds. So we had a plan for what to do if that were to happen. What if the other computer were to die? Now you have a plan for what to do if that were to happen. Then he played electric violin, and that went into another version of Mainstage on another laptop. So what do we do if that were to fail? So
nothing.
I use Mainstage as an example here because going through Mainstage, there were, I don't know, was it tens of sounds, hundreds of sounds that would be missing if that computer were to just, you know, catch on fire.
That's interesting.
No, yes, we would have a problem. And you raise a great point. And one of the things with Eddie, and I've said this in interviews before, and I love Eddie. We're still in touch. I was just touching him last week. The experience was amazing, but it was a bit terrifying because of that reason. We really didn't have any backup. And I applaud Eddie because he did something. It's almost like a pioneer going to the North Pole for the first time or something. Where we really did. We were on tour, as Keith said, with three laptops, all running Mainstage, all linked together with Cat 5, and no backup. But everything worked, and it really was a testament to Mainstage. The only problems we had were
Apple computers.
And Apple computers, but the USB connections to this day. Now I think USB-C is pretty awesome. But, you know, as I was saying on this Metheny tour, we were using an older laptop, 2015, I think, and those USB jacks get a little wonky, and they get wonky on keyboards, they get wonky on... So the USB protocol is the only thing I can remember with Eddie's. Once in a while there was a 32-bit, 64-bit kind of a thing, but we solved that easily. But I'll close by saying, while nothing went wrong in the aggregate, dozens and dozens of shows in Russia, Japan, Poland, all around the USA, Canada. The interesting thing for me on the Eddie gig when I was running those 3 computers is that you never really relaxed because you didn't have a backup plan. You know, so I would sit there, the show's going fine, but I'm still going like, you know, on some level, because as Keith said, you don't have like a workstation that someone can go, okay, just use this, finish the show. Like
you live and die by the computer.
Yeah, but you know, but it also taught me though that when you have robust systems, you got to learn to just relax and say, hey, you know, Fender twin amps blow up also. It's not just software, you know. So I learned a lot on that gig.
Thanks, Andre. Ben, do you have any such anecdote?
I experienced the same kind of stuff with Keith and as Andre as well, because I had a solo tour with Eddie, so I had to, you know, set up the same kind of setup and rig. And it was the same kind of thing, you know, you kind of just have to, you know, learn it as best as possible, also kind of welcoming the shit to kind of hit the fan, because you're ready for it, you know, and obviously you learn little workarounds and stuff, but with Eddie's rig, it was really just like, this is what it is, and if it goes down, it kind of goes down, and he also is like a champ when it comes to that stuff. He, you know, he doesn't fret. He's also willing to get into it and figure out the issue or problem.
So he never
so
had a
nice.
substitute synthesizer, so to speak, one that didn't rely on soft synths.
Everything was MIDI, at least for the stuff that we were doing with UK and, you know, on the solo run that I had with him and Mark Bonilla. They were tributing both John Wetton and Keith Emerson. Yeah, he just had 2 MIDI controllers and his violin that's all going through main stage. And, you know, again, it was properly built. So, you know, if you just do things like that, and, you know, obviously working with computers and stuff, we all know that they have little farts here and there. So you kind of just have to be open to that.
Speaking of FARTS, I had a gig where I dragged, so my main stage has my theremin plugged through it as well, and I use all the effects on it, so I can have MIDI controllers turning things on and off, because it's just me cutting myself and my stuff around. So I had a gig in Knoxville. I landed up in post gig in Asheville, and I don't know how it happened. It's my fault, I know, but I dropped my laptop.
Oh dear.
I dropped my laptop. Everything was on it. I turned it on, ready for the gig. This was a festival. And I had a 30-minute slot, and it was coming up very quick. I couldn't run my laptop, so I ran around looking for people to jam with me. Because I couldn't play my tracks. I couldn't access my effects. I couldn't play anything. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to take my theremin and look for people to jam with me. Because I came all the way.
Jazz Odyssey.
I came all the way here. I'm not going to relinquish my 30 minutes just because of my laptop. But I'm just curious. That's my harrowing experience.
No, and that's great that you improvised. And I think Keith said something to that point before, that you got to have workarounds. And I learned a lot when we didn't have a workaround. But yeah.
Now I feel differently about that, by the way. I feel like when I was in control of Eddie's keyboards, I knew how to replace any single item if it were to fail. And we carried spare hard drives so that if the computer were to die, you could, put that hard drive in some computer somehow, and get it going. And on tour, I carried my Mac, which probably would have run, those hard drives, for example, as a spare computer. And we carried a spare keyboard controller. The VAX 77 is hinged in the middle, and it would go in a road case, and it would fit on an airplane without paying, the excess weight, baggage and whatever. That was a fascinating keyboard to tour with.
I do recall the VAX 77. I saw
49
it at
pounds.
Yeah, I was quite keen on it. I got to know the folks at Infinite Response, right? I think that was the company. No,
Yeah.
now defunct.
They were great.
Out of Texas.
Yeah.
Eddie Jobson worked with them to make sure that the weight on the action was, up to his preference.
Impeccable standards. Yeah. No, that's you're right. Keith.
Speaking of grand pianos, you get a different grand piano every day, and the action can be anywhere. Like some of them are just horrible, or you push too hard to try and get your sound out of it. Others are, there's just nothing like a fantastic piano when it's in great shape. It's inspiring, and we've all seen it when musicians sit down at an inspiring instrument. The music that comes out is different.
Yeah, absolutely. I am still very fussy about the key action. Even the wheels, whether it's a wheel or joystick for pitch bend or modulation, the key action and how I feel when I do aftertouch and things like that, playing synth or keyboards. And it really gets in the creative way, the enjoyment part of playing live when things don't quite work or quite feel the way you want them to feel. So, of course, I'm also curious if any of your artists have ever complained to you, well, this is not the way I set it up before. Why isn't it? Well, sometimes the stress of the moment, and I wonder if any of your artists have ever made this comment to you in a fit of stress, that when I set it up at home, it was fine. Now they've set it up, it doesn't feel the same. Have you ever had this issue? And it's not you, of course. It's just that they're feeling a little stressed, so it's not working as it had been at home when they were more relaxed.
It happens all the time for any number of reasons. There was one time where the height of the keyboard stand was at issue, and it turned out that the artist was wearing different shoes.
Yeah.
So, it took a little bit to, wait a minute, I know this is the same, height. It wasn't even adjustable without, taking the keyboard out and putting extra things underneath or taking them out. So, I knew it was at the right height, and you can measure it and verify and all of that. Well, it turned out that he was just wearing different shoes, and it was like, okay. And then it went away. But, there was some stressful moments there where it took a while to understand that. And that's where, you're talking about trust is earned. I had the trust of the artist, so when that came up, we worked it out, and it's not always that easy, especially when it's somebody you're first getting used to.
That's an interesting point, because I have a standard pair of shoes that I wear when I'm performing, because the height of me and my theremin is very crucial to how I'm
It's
able
crucial.
to,
Yes, absolutely.
especially for the theremin, because everything depends on where you are in proximity to the antennas. So I hear what you're saying.
No two theremins are alike. They look the same. They're made, in the same, manufacturer or whatever like that. No, it's a living, breathing, organic instrument. Much the same as, a guitar is, or a grand piano or something like that. Thankfully, a lot of keyboards are more consistent. If you get one chord Kronos and a different chord Kronos, they're often very similar, but over time they wear out, and so we've had to replace keyboards, keys in them, or joysticks, as you are discovering yourself, that anything can fail. Knobs, screens, wires. First it's mostly wires, and then jacks, the connections that get stressed over time. But any number of things, and it certainly doesn't help to carry them around the world. I do worldwide touring, and it's stressful on my body. I can imagine what it's like on the equipment. They go in trucks and get dropped, and forklifts go through road cases, and any number of terrible things that happen. Rain, snow. Hot temperatures,
weather.
Cold temperatures, weather.
Yeah, you bring up another interesting phenomenon, weather. In Singapore, it's hot and humid. So
simultaneously.
I have a different set of problems here because it's hot and humid.
And then you do outdoor shows, and now nobody can read the screen because the sun is, blasting into the screen on the keyboard. Like, what patch am I on?
Yeah.
All of those things. don't necessarily expect it until it comes up, and then it's okay. Now, how do I deal with that?
Mm-hmm. And Ben,
Thankfully,
oh, sorry.
the screens on keyboards are typically easier to read in the daylight than they were when they first came out. The Prophet 5 was a notorious one where you couldn't, with any daylight on it, you know, the artist I was working with couldn't tell what patch you were on.
Thanks, Keith. Ben, have you encountered any such issue? You know, either platform heels, shoes, or the pants are too tight, or the sticks don't feel quite the same, or my hands are sweaty but I don't realize it, or something.
I think there's always those said kind of cases with every tour. Sometimes it's just like the learning curve of the musician, or like you said, just, you know, nervousness or anxiousness or something like that. But not really. You know, I think, again, from tour to tour is always different, but from my most recent tours, there hasn't really been those said kind of instances.
Except the gongs falling down.
Yeah, many years ago.
So Ben, since we're at you, I do have a picture of, this is the pre-COVID show that you did with Mike Gordon.
Okay.
Let me get a picture up here. Ben. Here's his percussion setup that I have from you, his picture.
Okay,
so you
yeah.
were I understand this was a 5-piece band, his solo tour, am I right?
Yep.
And you were tech supporting him as a bassist as well as his percussion setup, is that right?
I wasn't the bass tech, but I was the drum and percussion tech to start, and then I have also recently now turned into the keyboard tech for the Mike Gordon band as well.
Oh, wow.
We did one tour before the pandemic hit, and that's what you're seeing now is his percussion rig. The percussionist, his name is Craig Myers. We've built a custom kind of rack, and we've changed things throughout the years, but that's the most recent one, and very condensed. Instead of having two congas, just having the high conga, and having the Korg wave drum, as you can see towards the bottom right. Having a table of percussion, and the SPDS that also I had set up for some trigger pads around the kit. Can't really see them because they were black, so they kind of get disguised. Set of bongos, and then we had a microphone that's going into, or a set of microphones that are going into that mixer that you see bottom left, and that was controlling the effects that we were sending to the bongos. So he had, you know, some phaser and reverb and delays, so he had control over the effects versus the front of house engineer putting effects on his drums.
Cool.
And yeah.
I'm curious about your triggers. So did you do the actual technical part for him? So I guess I'm saying, did you sit down together and he would say, well, I'm going to have this, and how can we rig it up, and you do the technical advisement? Or did he actually build the setup and then you took over in terms of teching?
Yeah, I mean, all of the above. I mean, for some of the fun stuff, and both of these guys can attest to, when you're really working with people that are passionate about their craft, they're always willing to listen but also try things. So Craig was also very responsive with trying things and trying new setups to not only better kind of the layout of the band, but also himself within the band. So he would say, oh, I want a clap sound over on this pad. So yeah, I would be making that happen per se. And then, you know, a lot of the stuff within the SPDS, he would do the programming, but then I would be putting it to each pad and setting up, obviously, the patches on the wave drum and stuff like that. But yeah, we all just kind of experimented and, you know, kind of went within the tour, trying things and experimenting and seeing what worked, what didn't work.
So we talked about minimalistic setup. This obviously isn't minimalistic. Was this deliberate? Did he want more drama
Well, there was also, I mean, the picture you're looking at now, there was probably envisioned maybe twice as much kind of stuff, but we condensed it over time. So now it's kind of everything that you see in the picture he uses. Versus the Terry Bozzio kit that I tech for had 9 kick drums and 36 toms and 40 odd cymbals and stuff, and he didn't touch half of the kit for most of the performance, but it all needed to be there because it was a part of their performance, whether he needed it for a song or two or the last, you know, hurrah at the end. But
so you're saying they were like prop.
It wasn't exactly it wasn't.
No,
it
they
wasn't,
weren't. They just weren't used during the entire performance.
Yeah,
how many pedals did he have? That kid is just
22 bass pedals.
22 pedals.
Yeah.
Now, when you say bass pedals, that includes the hi-hat pedals and.
Yeah, all the pedals were. Well, there was technically only 3 hi-hats, and then there was and there was 9 kick drums, and all of it had separate linkage to go to those said kick drums. And the one thing about Terry is that he's not really, you know, playing in the sense of just holding a drum beat. He's holding the bass groove with his feet, and each drum is bass note that was tuned specifically. And he's
playing melodies with his feet.
Yeah. And also soloing with his hands. So all of the, you know, piccolo toms on his left and his other toms on his right were all tuned to a certain scale, kind of like a big marimba, or a glockenspiel or something of that nature. So everything was used on the kit throughout the night, but he just wasn't obviously using it at one time. Same with Craig in this kit. Most of it was concentrated in the SPDS and the conga and bongo, but wave drum was used during some drum percussion jam breakdown, and obviously during the reggae songs or some of the covers, using more of the dub section of the kit where he can really affect the bongos or said drums.
What's the worst that has gone wrong with that setup?
Everything going into a mixer always can bring up issues, whether it's the mixer or one cable or a power supply or the pedal itself, because he's not exactly hitting it with his foot. He's slamming it with his hand. So, over time, if it's just a one-off gig, you can sometimes get through, but when you have 20, 30 gigs on a tour, you're always going to kind of see some more issues come up with the gear. But really the only biggest problem is his SPDS not working, just totally crashing. And sometimes that needs a total reboot. But we played a gig in Asheville, actually at the arena there, and right before the performance, everything in the SPDS transposed up like a half measure. So every time that he hit something, it was not only tonally wrong, but there was a delay on it. So we had to go through each patch and manually change it because we couldn't upload his stuff onto a laptop in time and then re-drop it. So he could have maybe not played it, but played with it that night. But it is kind of a integral part with his kit, with some of the bass drops and some of the samples that he has made on it. So,
ouch.
Yeah.
That's
you just reminded me of a show. This was when drum machines were new, and I believe it was the SP12 that was plugged in behind the drummer into a wall outlet on a stage, and somehow the power cord got kicked out and the drum machine lost its entire memory. And so everything was just not going to be there, and I think I can't remember if we had the data and got it back in there or whatever, but just that sorting it out, like waiting for it to boot up, and then there was nothing in there to say, Keith, help. And fortunately, I think that was sound check, and so we had some time to deal with it, but it's just like back in the day, things like that would go wrong, and it would be catastrophic in a way that maybe now you're saying the thing did boot up, it just didn't sound right, so you had some time to address it.
Fortunately, the time was there for us to be able to diagnose it and fix the
And those
problem.
are the ones where maybe the audience doesn't know what kind of sweating went on between sound check and the show.
Right up to doors or right up to the show or showtime. Exactly.
I don't know how many times I've been working while the audience is coming in and things like that to get a show up and on the air.
Dinner is optional. That's one.
Dinner.
It's one of our mottos.
Right.
If you every once in a while I'll get students or in some workshop or something, like kind of like, what are the half dozen things you need to do this job, to tour, and I tell people right away, you better love traveling. I mean, a lot of it has nothing to do with the technical stuff, but Keith just reminded me of one of the main ones. You got to love traveling. You got to be okay with being around the world or around the country.
And you're saying traveling, not sightseeing, though.
The first thing I say is...
I'm saying you mean traveling, but not sightseeing.
Exactly. Yeah, I tell people that too. But Keith, though, what's the first?
I was going to say touring is not for everybody. As a musician, not every musician it's good for them, and certainly as a technician, I've seen plenty of people come and go, and Ben and Andre and I are the ones who we've got it in our blood, we love it, and so you work really hard to maintain it, and it does mean certainly a lot of meals are missed or sleep is missed and things like that, but it also means that we get to see some amazing parts of the world and just fascinating people from everywhere, and you find out how similar we are and how different we are, all in the same the same meeting. And for me, that makes all of the difficult part of it worthwhile. Totally, but you gotta love it, and you've got to work really hard to survive it. And the other thing is, it's a team effort, and the technicians are, the tail does not wag the dog. The artist is first, and once everything is handled for the artist, then you get a chance maybe to go and do something interesting. And I think touring is all about managing your 5-minute periods. And if you're really good at that, you get to do one more thing. I got to see the Eiffel Tower the first time I was in France because of, just very carefully, once the bus stopped and I got into my hotel room, I threw the bags down, ran, and
get right out.
Figured out the metro and the money and things like that. And I got to see, the Eiffel Tower. There you go. Taking
advantage of days off as well. Obviously when you're on long tours, the days off can be really needed for sleep and catch up on home life or other responsibilities and projects you might have going on, because life does not stop on the road. But it's forcing yourself to go out and really explore. And one of my favorite times was in Japan last time with Andre. We were there with UK for their final tour, and we just decided on a day off in Osaka to just get lost, just kind of get on the train and just go. Don't have any kind of agenda, stop when we want to stop, go back when we want to go back, but just kind of just be out there. And that to me is like something that I'll remember forever, versus just like a gig or something. That's the experiences from the road is what you really kind of hold near and dear.
Thanks, Ben. I do have a picture, speaking of touring together. The three of you managed to, I don't know if this was by plan or accident, you were all three on the UK tour. I don't know which year this was though, but I do have a picture from, I think it was Keith. I think you sent me this picture.
Is that the picture of the four of us?
Yes.
It's a backstage photo. They had this, really interesting setup backstage, and Tony is there with the three of us. And I don't know who took the picture. I'm sorry, I can't remember, but we finally got it.
I remember
picture
that.
of the three of us together.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I where was that? I was trying to figure out. Is that in?
Well, if it's
some
Tony,
venue?
It's Europe and or UK, right? UK with UK.
Okay. And some venue that has kind of an old 50s
yeah.
camper.
I want to say Poland, but
yeah.
not sure.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Sorry, I've dumped that from my memory because I've done hundreds of shows since then.
I know.
But of course, that experience of touring with you guys was memorable. You get so tightly knit; it's a family on the road.
Absolutely.
So here's a
so
stupid
it's really difficult to
question.
be separate from my touring families.
Which Tony is this Tony?
Lennon, right?
He's
Yeah.
a light as a sound guy, right? In England. What did he do? I forget.
He was driving us.
He was driving us. Okay.
Yeah,
I think has
he said
multiple talents like the rest of us, but I think his primary job there was.
He said he used to drive Zappa in the 70s, I think.
Oh, right.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, Keith, you brought up two other things that I always put on that list when people ask. The word team. I always tell people right away, I say, if you're not a team player, it's not for you. Because that's it, man. That's really one of the most important things. You have to be able to know that we're all. And then the second thing you brought up that is prime is it's the artist's world. We're just moving through it. In other words, if that artist likes the room to be 58 degrees so they perform, let's get used to 58 degrees. If that artist likes the brown M&Ms and this kind of, then that's what's going to be there. And all the way through, all the technical stuff, how loud things need to be, how the sound mix, everything. And it's funny, that is actually a thing, because we've all worked with people who don't get that sometimes. And they kind of, they want to do it a different way. And, artists welcome our suggestions. We are there to say to them, hey, there's a new unit that does this, or there's a better way to do this. There's a balance, though. And I find that's one of the make or break things. Because I think we've all worked with crew people where they just don't realize that at the end of the day, whatever that artist wants is how we're going to do it. And that's big.
Thanks. So all three of you are multi-skilled, and I mentioned this several times already. Not just multi-skilled, but multi-talented and beyond. You're all disciplined, you're hardworking, you can't wait to eat up new technology. And that's a very important wish to have, the wish to learn new technology. And you take over from each other during the course of the show, especially if you're working together on the same show. How do you go about not stepping on each other's toes, figuratively speaking and literally speaking? Do you typically work with a stage manager, or do you coordinate with each other somehow because you have this hidden code, or you can speak with symbols or something, or you know each other so well you don't need anyone to tell you what to do?
It's such a complex question because it's different for every tour, different for every group of, everyone. Because it's, the tour is a touring party, and it can be hundreds of people down to, a handful of people. And we've all, I think, done a bunch of those. When I was touring with Beyonce as a keyboard tech, there were many, many more people and many other things going on that were more important to the production than keyboards. And so I just had to make sure that I was never holding up, anything there. And fortunately, I stayed ahead of everything and was quite competent at doing that. But it also meant that at any given time, there's, 99 or whatever other people who have their needs. So I got to be careful not to suck up all the air in the room, or you would be gone in an instant. And then with other groups, in my early days, I would be the only technician touring with the band, much like Ben's talking about there, where suddenly it's, well, can you do the keyboards too? And it's like, well, I think so, or whatever. And, you step up to whatever the demands are there. So again, trust is earned. And the first thing, going back to my first day in the recording studio and coiling up cables, one of the first things I had to learn there, and it was kind of the hard way, is to shut up and to not be the person driving, the conversation all the time. And, I didn't even know I was a person who talked too much or whatever, until I was told, just, you need to talk less. And it was like a really important lesson. And every other person I've ever worked with now when you find somebody who talks too much, it's like really obvious that no, you need to, you know, you give some space for the other people to have their room to, you know, to participate. And certainly the artist gets the say first. So, you know, once you learn that balance, you're well on your way toward the next step, which is learning to do your job, or even to know what that is.
Anyone else want to add?
I mean, just adding to that, you know, Keith is totally correct. And, you know, it's just, for me, it was just trying, and I was always kind of the young gun. I was always the younger person. So for me, it was just, you know, mouth shut and open eyes and open ears as much as possible. Going with the flow, you know, as much as you can, and being observant and being mindful of your, you know, surroundings, and that you're one of, like Keith said, 10 or 20, 30, 100 people on the road, and everybody's, you know, got their own thing. So don't take things personally as much as possible, and, you know, keep your head on the job. You know, Andre has always been kind of my mentor in the fact of, if things can get awry on tour, to take a breather. You know, it's okay to just step away from something, and then collect yourself and come back, you know, instead of blowing up on yourself or blowing up on the wrong person, because that could be the end of the job or end of your career. So that's kind of...
On that subject of blowing up, you just reminded me one really important thing that it took a while for me to learn, which is it used to drive me crazy when something went wrong on the road, because I spent so much time trying to prevent it, and, you know, something would happen and whatever. And so I used to really get, you know, bent out of shape when something would go wrong, because I was trying very hard not to have anything go wrong. And, you know, the Keith Emerson's organ catching on fire is a great example of, now I realize that the best stories come from the things that have gone wrong.
That hurt the most.
Another perfect show is like, okay, we did it, you know, 3 in a row or something like that. But then there's the one where, you know, I have a story to tell. So at least the saving grace is now the things where something goes wrong usually come with a tale to tell.
Andre, anything from you?
Well, first thing I'll say, in honor of Keith Emerson, because he's always in my head in situations like this, at that moment, Keith Emerson, correct me if I'm wrong, Wechsler, Keith Emerson would have said, "I remember when my organ caught fire. I couldn't wear tight pants for months." Keith never missed the chance to make a silly and very funny joke. So we miss him. He was so funny. People don't realize that. If they haven't, please find his autobiography, Pictures of an Exhibitionist, which is right in the title. But he's a very funny guy. But I would say, no, these are great points these guys are raising that I would concur. It's about listening, reading the room, and to your great point of how do you stay out of everyone's way, it's really a focused job. You put your phone away, you're looking around, and you're observing stuff that's not even part of your setup. Once you're comfortable, it's important to really say, oh, okay, I noticed the lighting director always needs the downstage area before we can do this. Oh, I noticed, okay, this person wires things a few feet away from me. Let me pay attention to that. So just observing, listening, and then and just from that's how we end up helping each other, because then you realize, oh wait, that case doesn't belong there. I know it's the bass text. So it's about just paying attention and
that's where that team comes back in.
It's very the team thing. I'm not even a big sports guy. I played some football as in soccer in high school and stuff, but it stays with me that on a sports team, no one person is the only situation. You're working together. So
I guess some clever person once say we can't all be the head of the body.
That's exactly true. It's yeah.
So as we head towards the end of this 2-hour chit chat, which has been most fun, and I'm quite sure we'll have you back again if if you would be honored to be my guest for round 2, especially if you've been on the road between now and when we have you back again. That'll be most fun, I think. I do have, and I did have some questions about engineering, but I think I'll ask you in round 2. But I do have other questions just to finish off. Of course, I've written here other responsibilities outside teching, but we've somewhat covered that. But I would like to ask, management skills, would you say that's very crucial in your work? In all,
it starts with time management. Absolutely.
Besides managing
time management, Andre.
Yeah, besides managing yourself, do you find yourself managing your artists as well? Kind of like hurting them in some ways, you know, without them realizing it? Do you ever have to apply your management skills in that way?
It depends on the gig, but yeah, very much so. And that's where the wearing many hats comes in. Mm-hmm. You know, part of what we do is babysitting. There's a psychological thing where once you learn your artist and you learn when they're nervous around fans or when they're tired or they might be cranky. Yeah, you do have to know a lot about their personality. And you do. You manage them in a subtle way with a goal towards they need to feel comfortable to perform tonight. But yeah, sometimes you do need to kind of tap your clock and say, hey, you know, if you don't get off stage now, you won't have time to do this or that. So there's a bit of that creeps in because they get into their world and they don't even know what time it is sometimes. And, you know, yeah.
You just reminded me on the last Emerson, Lake and Palmer concert at the High Voltage Festival. It was the drum solo, and after the drum solo, Keith Emerson was going to come out and stick some knives in the organ, and he forgot that at the end of the drum solo, there was some pyro that was going to go off right on the stage. Oh. And thankfully, the keyboard tech saw that he was about to push the organ out right into the area of the stage where the pyro was going off, and, you know, grabbed him kind of like, you know, whoa, by the neck, and, you know, you might not want to go out just now. And so, you know, you have to be ever vigilant, and there's any number of reasons why, and each artist is different, and it's a balance. Look, what we do is a balance of being in charge and being the, you know, the worker bee, and knowing when and how to do all of that. The more you can suss that out, the better and more valuable you are. And that's true, I think, of, you know, anything in life. You have the same experience in your own home studio, I think. The more you can cover your own things, or today you got your, you know, laptop working, that means we had a successful interview. You know, all those skills pay off. And I don't know how many manuals I've read in my career, but it's thousands of manuals, and that diligence has enabled me to know what's going on inside a lot of keyboards. And before I even see a new one, I'm pretty sure I know what's going on inside it. And, you know, so I can read through that new manual pretty quickly because I'm looking for what's new about the new chord keyboard or something. You know, it's one skill feeds off of another. And so the more you do, the more valuable you become to everyone around you.
Ben, anything from you? Or has it been much covered?
Say that again?
Or has it been much covered by Keith and Andre?
Yeah, they covered a lot, yeah.
So what about a no-no in your line of work? What is a definite no-no?
I'm sure we all have a bunch. You know, a big one, and this came up for me because some people had some questions about this new tour I'm doing, and we've all seen people go wrong on this. A big one is you're not there to be a big fan, a fanboy or a fangirl. You're there to work for the artist. And I've seen artists really enjoy, even if you are a fan, you talk about it some other time, or maybe it comes up months into your gig. But we've all seen technicians who get on the gig and they want the artist to sign things, and
the worst.
Asking them questions about the 1978 tour.
Please take another photo with me, another photo. Just stop it.
That's tricky. So I think that's a big one because I find that, and I think this is universal, artists really appreciate when you you just keep that on the back burner. And I've seen people who don't, and they get let go because they don't understand that you can't be filming everything and you know, being a fan all the time. So I think that's a big one. Trust. This goes back to the word trust that Keith brought up. They're trusting us to help create a little world for them, whether it's on stage or they're trying to get to the bus or trying to get to catering. Or part of what we do is just kind of give them the mental space, because it's a lot for the person who's the singer or the main instrumentalist or something. They are completely being pulled and tugged, and their attention is always. So that's I think one of the jobs we do as technicians, besides all the gear, is just make sure they have space.
Anybody else with a no-no? That's mainly it.
Yeah, that's definitely a big no-no. Yeah.
So
you know, again, trust is earned, and part of that is not everything an artist tells you is for public dissemination. And nowadays, where everybody has a camera with them at all times, and you know, is filming, that those boundaries are harder to manage depending on who it is and what their needs are.
Yeah, I hear you. So how has live touring been impacted by COVID for you guys, or from your perspective, from what you've seen?
I mean, I'm just getting back into traveling now. I think we all, including Keith, you know, have been off the last like almost 2 years.
2 years. 2 years off.
Yep. I just had my first tour bus tour, traveling the Northwest last month, and it was definitely kind of a mixed bag on who or what state maybe took things serious or not serious. But our band and our management asked us to make a bubble within the venue and the tour bus. So we had 12 guys traveling, and we were all able to get tested every day if we wanted to, and we were all asked to wear masks everywhere. But we were also asked not to kind of stray away from the herd at all. So no going out after the gigs, or no really going out to hang out with friends or family. If family was going to come to a show, they had to get tested beforehand. They weren't allowed in the green room. They weren't allowed on our tour bus. So we created a bubble within ourselves that we actually had a healthy, successful tour with 12 guys on the road traveling to 20 different states or whatever it was, for 3.5 weeks, 4 weeks a month. Versus some other tours aren't particularly taking it as serious. And then there's obviously the chances of some member getting COVID and then ending the tour, so, you know, I think it's just kind of, everyone has to view things with the risk versus reward. And with the band that I work for, you know, now, they're taking it, you know, rather serious. And, you know, even asking us when we get home from a run or a certain tour to get a test again, and just to make sure that everything is okay, you know, before you go into another tour or you go see family or whatever the case may be. So.
Thanks, Ben. How about Andre, your recent tour with the Metheny trio? Did you have a similar?
Yeah, a lot of what Ben said overlaps completely. You know, it was over 2 years for me. I did a tour in October 2019, and then, like these guys, we were in touch the whole time. I saw tour after tour after tour get canceled all through 2020. We kept thinking, okay, we'll start in June. Okay, we'll start in September. But finally went on this tour, and likewise to what Ben said, I'm really happy that from Pat and his management on down, very science-based, very serious about this.
Good.
So I had to prove vaccine status to even get the job, my vaccine card and all that information. We got tested twice a week, and we could, or more if we liked. The tests were all there. They had KN95 masks available for us.
Wow.
They had a bubble also. It was eight guys, 8 men, 2 women in our bus world. Same thing. We were asked to not be going out to lunch with friends or hanging out with, and that was, you know, easier to do than some might think, because touring is kind of a bubble already. This just took it another 15% or whatever. But yeah, we had no meet and greets. We had no, and I applaud Pat from the top down. I mean, I never saw him hanging around and talking to anyone that he didn't have his mask on. And he never hung around. There was no signings. There was no photographs. Likewise, the other guys in the band and all of our crew, we really just kept it tight and knock on wood. So far, so good. But it was challenging, and part of our contractual agreement with venues also is that all the local crew be masked up for their whole time working with us, and that worked pretty well. You know, that there was, you know, one or two places you're always going to have someone, you know, with their research and their political views refusing, but you work around it. But it was almost exclusively, we had really good cooperation on the road, and audiences that showed up with their vaccine proof and all that stuff. But it's a challenging thing going forward, yeah, for all artists, yeah.
Thanks, Andre. Speaking of going forward, so Keith, you'll be back on the road with Dream Theater soon, next year. How do you think 2022 is going to look like in terms of live performance? What do you think the artists are expecting and the audiences are expecting?
So certainly we're all starved for music. I have seen 2 concerts in 2 years, and that's rare for me, including normally I participate in a lot of them, let's say hundreds of them in a year. So it's a complete change and a shutdown of economy, as well as a big source of joy for me. So I'm hoping, as everyone is, that somehow we can continue to or get back to some of that pleasure of sharing music with an audience, because that is a powerful part of life for me. And it's somehow we'll all get back to it at some point. The question is when and to what level. Andre, just talking about to not be able to do meet and greet is a big change from the way tours have been carried on. And a connection of an artist to the fans is a big part of what we're doing and why we're doing it. And to lose the meet and greet part of that is tough for the fans, as well as the artists, as well as the economy. There's tickets sold and things like that. Dream Theater, a big part of what we do is international touring, and if that is not possible, it's going to be again a big whack in the wallet for everybody. So hopefully, not only in the United States do we get back to touring, and that's our first tour, will be a U.S. tour, but immediately on the heels of that, we have a show in Japan and then a European tour. So, please, hopefully the heavens open up and allow us to do that, and allow us to do it safely, because, one person in the team getting sick could take down the whole tour. And that's why, Andre, we need to be as vigilant as you described there, and Ben, with your team and how that was taken care of. I've worked in the television business recently, and there's a person on the set whose job it is to make sure everybody is following the rules. There's a team, again, making sure that for us it was get vaccinated and or tested and or both, and wearing the masks, and the vigilance of just not being stupid and bringing more on yourself. And I think of it as a big picture, and it's not just, oh, am I okay, but am I gonna contribute to somebody older than I having major problems. And it's not just older, it's people with underlying conditions. Every spread that there is can cause a lot of problems and a lot of grief in the world, and it's my choice to not add to that.
Thanks, Keith. we're going to wrap up the live stream in a minute, but I just want to know if Ben and Andre have anything else to say. But we're all very grateful that you are staying safe and you're being responsible for yourselves and each other. And as my
I just wanted to say thank you for having us on. This has been great, and
thanks,
it's awesome
Ben.
to catch up with, you know, Andre and Keith, but to meet you for the first time and to have us on, I really appreciate it. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Ben. Andre, you have anything else to say? I'll see you back again soon for round 2, but I just want to know if you have anything else to conclude this with.
Sure. I'll join Keith and say that, I'll be on the road in about a month and a half to Pat Metheny, more shows in Canada and the USA, and then it's on the books. We knock on wood again in April to be in Europe. So patmetheny.com. He's got this great new trio, this great new record. So that's happening for me. Also, I'm if people want to check me out, andrechumley.com. Everything's there. If you can spell my name, it's there. And I do my Patreon stuff. I do performances. I do all kinds of things. So I'll be doing that over the winter. And then I'll close by also just thanking you for having me on. You know, I've been watching your shows from a distance, enjoying the stuff you do. And such an amazing list of guests. But one person I want to really give a shout out that you had on that I really don't know if I ever had this career. When I was a teenager, I would read every article and some of the books by Craig Anderton. And you had Craig Anderton on, and that was a great interview. And that guy, I got to meet him at NAMM one time, and wow, I don't think I have a bigger hero, because I'm talking in 1981, 82, 83, when I was starting to read those magazines. What's MIDI? How do you use an Atari computer in music? What's guitar synthesizers? Craig Anderton, and he's still incredible, and you know. So I would end by saying, people go watch the Shueh-li interview with Craig, and so honored to be part of your show. Yeah.
Thanks, Andre. Yeah, Craig is many people's heroes too. I would say, as you're talking, the line that came to me was, he's been there, done that, and is still doing it.
Amazing.
Thanks, guys. It's been
good. I really appreciate you sharing your music with us too. That was a great part of the the whole presentation today. I really enjoyed that.
Oh, thanks, Keith.
Awesome.
I'm doing this for all of you, for my friends, and all the viewers actually. Most of the time, all my viewers are my friends or my fans, and many of them have been on the show as guests as well. So there you go. And so I feel so fortunate that I can still have a party. You know, I can have a gathering of friends, despite the fact that I can't see you in person. This is my party.
I love it.
Well, electronics, again, live by the computer, die by the computer.
There you go. Okay, folks, thank you so much, the three of you. Keith, Wechsler. There you go.
There's some great comments in the feed there.
Yeah. I tried to jump in a few times.
Yeah, I know. Isn't it crazy that all I did was move from one chip to a new chip, and I have this whole slew of issues.
Everything changes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now try taking everything in that room and moving it to another country.
Right.
And then move it to another country the next night.
Right.
Oh, except you're going to get internet that's like snail slow. Okay, so now nothing works.
I've been doing this between Nashville and Singapore every year since 2014.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah.
But
thank you, guys.
It keeps the mind alive, you know, and I enjoy that. I feel really empowered when I solve problems.
There is a big amount of joy in successful anything like that. And
so it looks like my software aggregator did resume the broadcast. Wow, isn't that interesting to discover?
That's interesting.
So
not dead yet?
No, it's still running. There we go. So anyway, thank you again, you guys. It's been such a pleasure for me to get to know you, Keith, and you, Ben, and to see you again, Andre. It's
Good
been
to see you.
Yeah, yeah. You guys take care, please. I hope you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Have a
hope
good
you-
day and
yeah.
night.
Thanks.
See you next time.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks again for bringing so much joy and pleasure to our
The
lives.
Dream Theater tour that we were going to go to Asia, including Singapore, got canceled. So hopefully, you know,
Hopefully soon.
I'll get to see you
Yeah.
there if
I'm
we
in
can
Nashville
resurrect
again.
an Asia tour.
Right, right. See you in either Nashville
I
or
could
Singapore.
be
right?
either place.
Yeah, definitely Nashville's on this next run.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, well, then I might meet you in person. In any case, thanks, Ben, Andre, Keith, once more, and take care. Be good to yourself, and I hope you get plenty of tours coming up so you have more stories to tell us when we meet again for round 2.
Thank you.
Thank you,
You soon.
guys.
Thank you.
Look
Bye.
forward to
Bye.
Bye.
Ciao.
So there you go. That was so fun talking to the three of them. I need to sort out the system audio when Zoom comes on. Again, all I did was change computers, but I know that the CPU is quite different. We have going from Intel to Apple's homegrown chip. So I spent, as I said, a day and a half trying to upgrade all my software and making sure everything worked, but somehow the system audio didn't catch. So I'll figure that out hopefully before the next show. Anyway, you've been wonderful again. Great to have you, my friends and my fans and viewers who are new viewers who are now my friends. Yay! Oh, yes. So I hope you had a fun time too. Let me put my mic further away because it seems it's very loud. Next episode, I have 2 guests. Race, I'm not quite sure if I'm saying his name properly. I'm going to pronounce it as I read it here. Race Krehel and Ryan Hartzell. They are going to talk about VR and AR, augmented reality, particularly the visual side, visual design. We've had guests talk about immersive audio for music and immersive audio for movies and what you call them. I can't think of the word. No, I can't think of the word. But it was, what was it? We looked at a ride in Tokyo Disneyland and places like that. So immersive audio applied to those environments or those scenarios. But this time we're going to talk about something a little different. I can't wait to speak to them about AR because we're all very familiar with VR, but AR is fairly rare still. It's not recent, but it's rare still to experience AR. So please join me. I'm trying to schedule a few interesting people for next year, but next episode will be the last episode before Christmas and New Year. And I might be planning a trip after that. I don't know yet. It all depends on the travel scenario. So please join me for our last 2021 episode in a couple of weeks, the weekend before Christmas. And I also want to chat with you to see how you'll be spending your Christmas and your New Year as well. So in the meantime, stay safe. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe. And if you're interested in my music, my Bandcamp store, the URL is now displayed on the screen. I really appreciate if you purchase my music, and even more appreciative if you subscribe, because I'm really trying to hit those numbers. Okay, everyone, thank you so very much. Take care till I see you again. Bye.